of men. The shadow knows.
There's why I'm not coming up there. The button was stuck. How's everybody doing out there today? Well, this is day 2 of proofreading my novels. We'll still be working on The Against the Wind. The saga begins. And yeah, so as a quick recap, let's see. Also, the only one we got in here right now, looks at least the only one that's making comments is Phelan Clan Wolf. Oh, look, I see some other numbers up there, so other ones are in here. So if you weren't here yesterday when I did the prologue through the middle of chapter 2, quick synopsis of what Against the Wind is about. Walt Rogers is the main character. It starts off with him inheriting his uncle's ranch up in mid-Idaho over by Adams County. His grandparents, who are retired, he convinces them to come stay, to stay with him after the funeral. And a couple days later, the sheriff comes to see him. There was a bank robbery in town. The two robbers froze. The two robbers took off to a wilderness area, and the sheriff came to ask Walt to help one of his deputies track them down at the request of the deputy. Deputy knows how good of a tracker Walt is, and they catch him, bring him back, turn them over to the FBI, capture them and their getaway guide, turn them over to the FBI. This is bank robbery. They're there. They get the FBI blows it and tries to untie all three of the bank robbers, instead of doing one at a time and putting handcuffs on because they were trussed up with ropes. And the three of them, struggle with FBI agents, get guns. One gets guns, shoots several of them. Walt uses his saddle rifle to kill the three bank robbers. At the same time, as that's wrapping up, a team from Homeland Security shows up. They've identified the bank robbers as supplying money to a terrorist organization, and things go on with that. Sometime about several months later. Oh, before then, after that, Walt is asked to go over to talk to the principal at the school because the principal had made arrangements for the Future Farmers of America and the 4-H club to come out to Walt's ranch to work with the rescue horses and to help out there. And Walt approves it. He sees some of the boys trying to beat up some of the older seniors chasing a freshman. The girls' soccer team intervenes, and when the guy threatens to beat up the one of the seniors threatening to beat up the girls' soccer team, Walt intervenes. And anyways, he winds up meeting Sarah Ahern, the head of the what's known as the Girl Squad, and things go on. Several months later, the sheriff asks Walt to come into town. He has something important to discuss with him. There's a big crowd gathered outside the jail. The sheriff announces that he's going to retire because he's got his grandkids and stuff and everything, and he needs to spend time with and stuff after 30 years of public service. He nominates Walt to run for the spot of sheriff. The county supervisor, Marston, goes, "Oh, he can't do it. He's too young." And the sheriff goes, he will be 21 before the election. He can run. And the Homeland Security team shows up again because they're there for an investigation into a real estate company that is been connected to funneling monies to a different terrorist organization. The head of the Homeland Security team, Special Agent in Charge, Chris Davies, announces that he had, due to Walt, he had bought his retirement home in Adams County, and that he considers Walt the best man for the job. And things go on. The event happens at the Labor Day festival, the parade, which the Future Farmers of America participated in, riding horses that from Walt's ranch there. And then Walt was asked to be a judge at the shooting competition. So he was one of the 3 judges for the quick draw competition. And Sarah Ahern shows up with a ball and cap pistol, and they thought, "Oh, well, you're at a disadvantage." She goes, "Hey," and Walt says if she wants to participate, she can. She winds up setting new state records and comes in 5th for national time, and lets Walt know that now she's 18. She's as soon as the election's over, she's going to come at him full speed because she's in love with him. Anyways, all right. So now we're at we'll be picking up here in November, Election Day, and that's where we're going to take off from there. So let's get this up here. Here we go. Now, once again, like I did yesterday, hang on, let me get that thing out of my face. Let's see here, banners. Oh, gotta go to style. I'm gonna take off the display. There, now you can see my face down there with the name in front of it. Okay, like I mentioned, and like I did yesterday, if I go through reading this out loud, I will find a sentence that makes sense when I read it in my mind, but when I say it out loud, it's like, there's some words wrong in here. And I'll make corrections as we're going through it. All right. And get this back up there to there. All right. So let's begin. Walt sat at one of the tables in the county office building, waiting for the results for the vote for sheriff. He was playing 6-handed pinochle with the current sheriff, Randolph Cooper, and several of his supporters. There were 4 total running for the office of sheriff, including Walt and Marston. The two others were Marcus Young, the owner of Young Sporting Goods, and the associate advisor for the venture crew that Sarah and her friends were in. Ron White, a retired public defender from San Francisco, and Ron White, a retired public defender from San Francisco. It really throws it off if I drop a word like "and" out of it. So last week, the polls had Walt with 42% of the vote, Marston with 15%, Marcus Young with 21%, and Ron White with 11%. Another 11 undecided. 4 days ago, Marcus withdrew and asked all of his supporters to join him in voting for Walt. 2 days ago, a flyer with Ron White's client list from San Francisco is being passed around the county and posted on YouTube, Twitter. Sorry, I got a cough drop in my mouth. His support suddenly dropped off. Then yesterday, Sack Davies led a joint raid on Marston's office and home. Sack Davies finally had enough evidence that someone at Marston's company was connected with the known terrorist with a known terror supporter and was funneling money to an offshore account. Marston wasn't around at the time and hadn't been seen since. After the voting polls were open for 2 hours, the first batch was returned to the county clerk so they could begin counting the votes. By noon, they confirmed what the exit polls were saying. Walt was leading with 92% of the vote. By 4 o'clock, it had dropped to 89% with 3 hours to go. Marcus Young had 3%, even though he had dropped out. Ron White has 5%, and Marston had 4% of the votes counted so far, with 23% yet to be counted. Walt said he'd wait until all the votes were counted unless Marston and White conceded first to claim victory. Aha! Randolph exclaimed as he laid down his meld, triple pinochle, and then he laughed. Well, Walt, you may win the election, but I won this game. Suddenly, Jerry Gray ran into the room, dragging Randy Cassidy behind her. Sheriff Cooper, listen to this, she said out of breath as she shoved Randy forward. Well, what is it? Randy fumbled with the volume control and set the scanner on the table. It's the Boise County Sheriff's Channel. They all leaned forward to hear what was on the scanner. 10-4, repeat. We have found Harrison Marston. What's his condition? Very drunk. The bartender at Harley's says he's been putting down Boilermakers since yesterday morning. Almost everyone in the room broke out laughing. Those that weren't laughing were the few supporters that Marston had left. It was now obvious that Walt had won the election and his new line of work was about to begin. The next day, they had the final tally for the election. The next morning, the final tally for the election was Walt Rogers, 94%. Mid-December. Sarah hadn't been kidding when she'd said that she was going to come after Walt full bore. The day after froze. Sorry about that. The day after the election, she came out to the ranch and cooked dinner for him. In the 6 weeks since she had cooked him, I forgot a word in it. Let's put it in here. She had cooked for him. This is why I read it out loud. Cooked for him only 4 more dinners. His evenings suddenly became very fully scheduled with county meetings and I just lost where I was at. County meetings and engagements with various organizations. Finally, he told Judy, the dispatcher, who was also acting as secretary, to stop making appointments without checking with him first. She started to object, saying that he needed to curry favor with the organizations. He asked her why. I didn't meet with them before, and I won with 94% of the vote. So stop, or I won't go to any more of them. So she stopped, and Walt finally got to plan out his evenings. Walt made a mistake there. Walt was driving into town, smiling at his good fortune. His grandparents had officially moved in and had taken over the business side of managing the ranch. They were more energetic and happier than Walt remembered them in quite a while. He surmised running the ranch gave him a purpose in life again. Once Walt had shown them Dan's plan for the ranch and the books Dan had written, they figured out that what Dan had been doing and came up with a few ideas to expedite the growth of the ranch and the special projects, with Walt's approval, of course. The books, which his Uncle Dan had written, were very popular and selling quite well in both hardback, paperback, and especially well as ebooks on Amazon. They were selling so well, in fact, that he stepped up the release dates to once a month for each of the series, and every other week for standalone novels. A couple of the series he had edited and rewritten portions to connect the storylines better. He added his name to them as co-author, and his dad got him on several TV talk shows in the last month. Hang on here. The last month. And that sent sales through the roof. He was making much more money from the books than the ranch. Dewey Johnson was working on a deal with that famous TV and movie star that used to drive the red Ferrari in Hawaii to turn 3 of the books. Let me change that. 3 of the books into movies. And I need to correct this here. And you there we go. Yes, life had turned out pretty good, he thought to himself. He could ask Sarah out this Saturday for a real date if they don't count the 5 dinners at the ranch. Oh, they didn't count the 5 dinners at the ranch as dates because she was cooking for him, cleaning up afterwards and going home. Most of the time he was delayed because of political sheriff duties. She deserved a real date for putting up with having to keep what she was there. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied here. She deserved a real date for putting up with having. That's why it didn't make sense. I don't like that. I would have said in my mind, I would have said having instead of have, because my mind knows where it's supposed to go. All right. Having to keep what was in her heart quiet from her friends and family. He would make this date something really special to show her how he felt. He was smiling about that as he turned on. He was smiling about that as he turned his county-issued Humvee onto Main Street. That is when he saw 2 black SUVs with flashing blue and red grill lights heading towards the sheriff's office from the other direction. Hang on, I got to add a word here. There we go. Dang it, Walt muttered aloud to himself. What's up now? He was about a block and a half away when the SUVs pulled into parking spaces in front of the office, and he saw Chris Davies jump out and wave to him to hurry. Walt liked to do 20 miles an hour in the 25 zone just to see who would pass him and to slow the kids down. It also gave him more time to observe what was going on around him. He accelerated to 30 and turned on the Humvee's flashing lights, including a low-profile light bar just above the windshield. That was barely visible until the lights came on. A set of red and blue lights in the grill that you could not see either until they came on. He also tapped the warble siren so no one would accuse him of speeding downtown. Pulling in next to Chris, Walt slid out of the Humvee and put his Stetson on. Hey, Chris, what's up? Aren't you supposed to be on vacation for a couple more days? Yeah, Chris answered, obviously annoyed about it. But this has to be something big for them to send Myers to come get me. Anyways, we need to get inside so we can set up for a joint law enforcement agency conference call with FEMA, NASA, and hosted by DHS. They hurried up the steps with two of Chris's agents carrying some Pelican cases, and inside Walt's office, not the office, inside Walt, hang on, let me put up. I hate it. This computer doesn't recognize the auto capitalization for Walt. Walt's office, they began to set up equipment from the Pelican cases that included a projector and a camera. One of the agents noticed that Walt's computer had a fiber optic connection. Hey, Sheriff, he asked. Yes, Walt responded over his shoulder. Can we borrow your fiber optic connection? Walt smiled. Go for it. As the agents finished setting up the video connection, setting up the video conference call equipment, Chris nudged Walt off to the side. Hey, I finished your last book the other night. Nancy knocked it out yesterday. Chris paused, not sure how to continue. Which one? There were 3 that were released last week. Chris looked surprised. Really? Wow, you must have a lot of downtime here. Do you need another deputy? Actually, my uncle wrote 35 novels and 15 partials. I've just edited some and released them. Some in his name, some in mine, some in both. So which one? The Self-Reliance series, book 2, Chris said. Then leaned into Walt and in a hushed voice, some of the events and reactions of different groups was kind of scary to me because they matched some of our profile work for various groups in stressful situations. My uncle did his research fairly thoroughly. All I did was update the scenario a couple of decades. Well, it sure has Nancy engrossed. She hasn't stopped asking questions about it. Could this really happen? Could it happen that way? What would things fall apart that fast? Chris shook his head. Heck, her questions have me doing double takes on our family plans. Walt smiled. My uncle used to say, Plan A never works. Plan B seldom works. Plan C works 40% of the time. So just skip to Plan F for flexibility, which means plan for everything with options for everything going south. That's a tall order, Chris said disheartedly. We'll start with the basics. Build from there. Water, food, medicine, protection, shelter. 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and so forth. Stage your planning acquisition along the same timeline that the COOP directives. COOP, Chris said in surprise. COOP, Chris said in surprise. That's for government. And if it's good enough for them, it should be good enough for you. Remember, make your master list, prioritize needs versus wants. Water is a need, while coffee is a want. Whoa. Coffee is a need. No, it's a need. A need? Yeah, from Dr. Seuss's The Lorax. Something you think you need. Need. Walt laughed. I had a lot of needs when I was younger, till my uncle taught me how. That froze again here. Hang on. There we go. Till my uncle taught me how to enjoy life with just the basics and be frugal with that. Be frugal with what I have around here. Or around me, sorry. All right. And you know what I found? The basics are pretty nice once you start to appreciate them. Then you'd be surprised what you can really do without and not miss it at all. They're getting ready to start the call, one of the agents said. Do you want your deputies to sit on it too? Walt nodded and said, I'll get them. He walked the door and called out to the deputies in the other rooms to come to his office. Chris motioned to Walt to take a seat next to him as the 3 deputies filed into the room and stood against the back wall. On the projection screen that the agents had set up behind Walt's desk, they could see the EOC at FEMA's headquarters in Washington, D.C., and different agency representatives taking their seats and getting back up while aides hurried around, placing folders and colored sheets of paper in front of each place on the table. There was a low din coming over the speakers. Everyone suddenly took their seats as the administrator of FEMA and the Secretary of Homeland Security walked in and sat down at the front of the table, at the front center table. Another man with salt and pepper beard sat on the other side of the Secretary of Homeland Security from the administrator of FEMA. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, began the Secretary of Homeland Security. We've called this conference call meeting to cover an issue of grave national and global importance. However, before we begin, I would like Scott Dunham to go over security requirements for this meeting. Scott? A slender man wearing a dark argyle sweater stepped in front of the table and read from a laminated card. This is a secret level briefing. All those who participate in or listening to this security briefing conference call must follow all secret classified information protection. Under no circumstances will they discuss any information discussed. Under no circumstances will any of the information be discussed with anyone from the press or with any family members or anyone else without government secret security clearance. Any violation of these orders is a crime of treason. Thank you, Scott. Secretary of Homeland Security spoke with a solemn voice. Folks, we are facing what's been classified as a possible extinction level event. 2 weeks ago, an asteroid of immense size was spotted emerging from behind the asteroid belt. The screen behind him lit up with a CGI illustration of the solar system with a blinking marker for the asteroid. Scientists at NASA have been working overtime to plot the trajectory of the asteroid and any threat it may have to Earth. This is the path they currently believe it is on, so it'll take the asteroid near Earth, but out past the far side of the moon's orbit. However, this path is not completely set. Hang on here. Come on. Completely set, and there are variables that could change the path more towards Earth or away from it. Several hands came up quickly, but the secretary held his hands up and waved everyone's hands down. Depending on its density, gravitational mass, and how it is affected by the gravity of Mars as it passes it, they could pull it closer to Earth so that it affects our oceans, and according to the USG, it could affect the magnetic flow within the Earth, causing dramatic increase in volcanic activity, or the gravity might not pull it as close as some scientists think, and it could strike the moon. Holding up his hands before anybody else could raise theirs, he continued. In any case, once word of this gets out, there'll be mass public panic. To this end, we are to set up a template plan for national and local response to that panic. Someone else just joined us. Welcome. As of now, we do not have any solid ideas how this will affect us in the United States or how it will affect other countries. After all, it'll be here in about 10 months. Or it could hit the Earth, said the man with the salt and peppered beard with a slight devilish grin, a slight devilish smile as gasp and protest have as gas. Hang on, I got to read this because I think I left a word out. Oh, of gas, protests of not having given a heads up, comma, put a comma there, and questions of validity came forth from those present in the EOC. Walt noticed not a sound of protest of concern came from his or Chris's men, other than the one who muttered, "Our brave and fearless leaders," in disgust. I need to change that to a capital O there. This is why I proofread stuff, because I type so fast sometimes I miss things. After a moment, the man with the salt and pepper beard continued. That is what some groups, including some media outlets, will run with as the truth once it gets out, whether or not it comes anywhere near the earth. And that is what will cause panic, which will lead to price gouging, lootings, shootings for supplies, general mass mayhem, and in larger communities and cities, full-scale riots. The Secretary of Homeland Security turned to him. Deputy Director Cunningham, I believe there will be a large degree of panic, but I don't think it'll get that bad. You're right, it won't get that bad. It'll get much worse. The telecon lasted a little over 2 hours and didn't provide much information for a population mass type. Well, it didn't provide information for a population mass. Hang on, there's a comma there. The type that his county fell into, but it did give him some insight to his uncle's mindset. This was similar to one of the causes of Milwaukee that his uncle Dan had been writing about before his death. He was sure that short of a collision with Earth on the American continent, he would survive at the ranch with his family if he could get them here without raising suspicions of anyone, including that of his family. However, with something this big, he guessed it would be a matter of weeks, not days, if not days at the most, for information on the asteroid to leak out and public panic would start. As far as getting the county ready, that was a headache he didn't want. But he knew most of the population would twist things around to their own needs and just screw it up totally and could get people killed in panic. He would have to start stocking supplies for the county today. That meant he would need to find some secure storage facilities that he could get supplies into without the public, other than those that he had to inform, knowing about it. He had laid it down hard to his deputies about keeping their mouths shut and not telling anyone, especially family. And Chris reinforced by saying if they told anyone, that not only would they not that if they told anyone, then they only, even if they that hang on. There we go. All right. Chris reinforced it by stating that if they only told their families, even if they only told one or two of their closest friends and so forth, it'd soon cause panic. And those that are needed to do their jobs to help prepare, and those that are needed to, sorry, this one's confused me. I wrote this one so fast. And then soon it would cause a panic, and those that are needed to do their jobs to help prepare the needed supplies, whether they realize it or not, would not be there to help, and everyone's survival would be in jeopardy. Okay, you got to read the whole thing together to make it make sense. Sorry. The arrival of the asteroid was about 10 months out, and that was not really enough time to ramp up production of needed materials and extra stores of food without causing a lot of questions and rumors to go flying about. Walt realized he was going to have to put every cent he could squeeze out of the ranch and put it into purchasing supplies for his family. Trying to get the county ready would be much more difficult, especially with politicians like Combs and Marston trying to make a buck on every county contract. Walt walked into the Ace Hardware where Sarah was working with a grim expression on his face. He walked slowly back to the paint department, not wanting to tell Sarah what he had to. He found her restocking gallon cans of paint. When Sarah saw him, she started to run to him, but stopped when she saw the look on his face. "What's wrong, Walt?" "Sheriff." She changed what she was calling him and looked around to see if anybody heard her call him Walt. Walt walked over by her and whispered, "I just had a meeting with Sack Davies." "So what did our very special agent in charge have to say that has you in such a dire mood?" Walt reared back and looked questioningly at her. "It's all over your face. Is something wrong? It's all over your face. Something is wrong, something big." "Shit. Now I know it's bad." Walt sighed. "We have a telecom conference. I can't talk about it, but it's very important, and I'm going to have to work on it all the time for the next several months." No, and we put it, hang on, let me change this right here. There we go. "So no dating?" "I'm sorry, really sorry," he said, with his eyes closed. "Damn it," she whispered back. "I hate the higher road." He opened his eyes again, looked at her. "So do I." "So you can't talk about it. It's so important that you don't want to be distracted by me." She saw the look in his eyes and said, "No, that's not quite right. You're scared for me." Walt stiffened and took a deep breath and slowly let it out. "If we were married, could you tell me?" "No," he rasped out, almost choking on the word. "If you swore me in as a deputy, could you tell me so I could help?" Walt bit his lips together. "So you could." Hang on, I need to put a comma in here. "So you could, but you don't want you don't want to burden me with having to keep my big mouth shut, right?" Walt just stared ahead and slipped his hand around hers and gently squeezed. "I understand," she gulped hard. "Tell me when you can, but know this, I'm going to find out and I will carry the burden too." "Crap," Walt grumbled. "I bet you will, but I wish you wouldn't." "I will, and I will support you as a loyal friend and a good wife, and as a good wife should." Walt snapped his head towards her in disbelief that she would say that as loud as she did. "Sheriff Walt John Rogers, go do what you need to do, and please let me know as soon as you can so I can help. And slid her hand up and unsnapped her top two snaps. "If this is too much of a distraction, just nod." Walt slowly nodded. "You're afraid I'll distract you and you'll miss something important," she said as she quickly re-snapped her shirt. "Go, I'll behave myself around you." Go. Walt turned and walked out of the store. Sarah stood there looking after him. This is really bad, and he needs my support, but he won't let me give it, she thought to herself. Hang on, I need to change that from speaking quotes to thinking quotes. I just use apostrophes for thinking, regular quotation marks for speaking. There we go. But I have to, so I got to figure this out. Chapter 3, Twists and Turns. It had been 3 weeks since the secret Telcon meeting with the Secretary of Homeland Security and others. DHS SAC Chris Davies had been working with Walt in getting the county ready for public panic, both officially and off the record. He had pushed through a security clearance upgrade for Walt and a grant for communications equipment, emergency generators, and portable shipping okay, I got it. Portable shipping container, refrigeration, and freezer units, and other miscellaneous equipment and supplies that they figured would be needed. All in all, he'd help Walt get the county emergency operations center, EOC, up and running with 10 times the supplies and equipment that Walt thought was possible. Walt knew that this was part of the fact that Chris and his wife had moved into town earlier in the year, but he elected not to say anything. Setting up the EOC was a hard sell at first with the county supervisors, but the promise of DHS grant monies, the political players fell in line with hopes of getting something extra out of it. Those unethical hopes were crushed when Chris and his team threatened to arrest Harrison Marston as an accessory for treason and money laundering for a known terrorist organization if he so much as pocketed a single penny. Even though it was one of his employees who confessed the scheme, Supervisor Combe had kept his head down after that, not wanting to garner any federal attention on himself. There we go. Walt also purchased 5 of the portable shipping container freezer units and 2 refrigeration units for the ranch. To power them, he'd got 2 multi-fuel 25 kilowatt 3-phase generators and conversion kits to add hydrogen as a 5th type of fuel. Walt just about did a somersault when he was able to get a portable high-volume hydrogen production unit the night before to supplement the one his Uncle Dan had bought. He just hoped that it would be delivered before word got out and panic set in, disrupting shipping services. Chris had called earlier in the morning and said that Walt needed to be at his office in Boise by 9 that morning, and that it was very important. Walt had completed the normal hour and a half drive in less than 1 hour with his lights and siren on, but turned them off as he exited the freeway and drove up to the federal building in Boise and pulled the Humvee into one of the parking spaces marked police only. He slid out of the Humvee, put on his Stetson and flipped the collar up on his duster against the cold winter wind. and headed into the federal office building. Even with all types of ranchers around Boise, Walt still drew a few puzzled looks from the business suit types on the street as he walked up the steps to the doors of the federal building. As he entered the building, his Tony Lama boots made a distinct sound on the floor. On the far side of the lobby was a pair of walk-through metal detectors like those TSA uses at the airports and other transportation hubs. Next to them were 4 turnstiles with badge readers. About 2/3 of the people were going through the metal detectors, and a few were able to use the turnstiles were obvious, and a few people were going through the metal detectors, and a few that were able to use the turnstiles were obviously packing a firearm to Walt's observation. As Walt walked up to the turnstile, one of the federal protection officers held up his hand and said, "Sir, you can't bring your weapon in here. You need to go through the metal detector." Walt simply smiled, pulled out a lanyard with a DHS security badge that Special Agent Charge Davies had issued him, and placed it against the badge reader. The green light on top of the turnstiles turned on, and the sound of the turnstiles unlocking could be heard. A puzzled look came over the officer's face. Walt slipped the... okay, hang on. I gotta change that. Slipped the lanyard over his head and proceeded to the turnstile and said, "DHS Tactical." The officer's eyes widened and as he choked out, "Have a good day, sir." Walt walked over to the bank of elevators and pushed the call button to go down when everybody else was pushing the call buttons to go up. When it arrived, he placed his badge against the badge reader next to the placed the DHS badge against the badge reader. I forgot a word there. Put it in next to the floor choice buttons, and then entered his 4-digit authentication code and selected B3. The elevator doors closed and began a quick descent to the 3rd basement level below the garage level parking. When the elevator doors opened, a harsh floor. When the elevator doors opened, the harsh fluorescent lights almost caused Walt to put his Ray-Ban sunglasses back on. Stepping out of the elevator, Walt paused to look down the off-white hallway in both directions before turning towards Chris's office. He was about to knock on Chris's office when Chris and Jesse came out of another door down the hallway. "Walt," Jesse called as soon as he saw him. "We're in the EOC conference room for the Telcon." "We'll be in there in a minute," Chris added as he turned into the door across the hallway from the one he just exited. "See you there," Walt smiled as he turned from the door he was about to knock on and started walking towards the end of the hallway to the door labeled Emergency Operations Center, his cowboy boots making that distinctive sound as he walked the tiled floor. I got to change it from speaking quotes to thinking quotes. There we go. There we go. "All I need now are a pair of spurs that jingle jangle like Gene Autry used to sing about," he thought to himself with half a smile on his face. face. Yeah, tongue tied here, folks. As Walt walked by the door, Chris and Jesse came out. If he glanced at the door, it was one of the few glass doors on this floor. Froze. It had a 2-foot wide glass panel on each side of the door. Like the door, they were tinted. Not so much you couldn't see in, but with the bright hallway lights and dimmer lights inside the room, it was darn hard to do so. You could make out shapes of several agents moving around hurriedly. There were 10 very large flat screen TVs on the back wall with major news channels and some satellite feeds on others. There was one agent who was waving his arms around frantically like a conductor trying to lead several symphonies at the same time. Walt could hear muffled shouting coming from inside, and he hurried past. When he got to the door to the EOC, Walt paused, took a deep breath before opening it. Grabbing it firmly, he gave a sharp pull and quickly stepped inside and pulled the door closed behind him. Walt wasn't sure what he expected when he entered the room. Walt kind of half expected to be met with stares that said, "What are you doing here?" He got a few quick glances, but basically he was just ignored. The room was a lot larger than Walt remembered it. As he looked around, he realized that the two side walls were movable and had been folded out of the way to triple the size of the room. In the middle was a group of tables that were slid together to make a large U shape, with about 20 chairs and paper nameplates in front of each chair. On either side of the big table were three rows of tables with 9 chairs each. Each chair also had a nameplate for it. Come on, scroll up. There we go. Looking around to see if there was a nameplate with his name on it, Walt almost bumped into Agent Myers, who was busy placing folders on each one, and said, placing folders in front of each chair. Not slowing down, Myers said, "Hey, Walt, you're on the right side of the big table next to Chris." At first, Walt thought he meant they were in one of the tables on the right side of the big table. As he got near, he spotted his and Chris' nameplates on the big table near the corner of the U. I got to change that from a speaking to a thinking again. That's what happens when I type quickly. Okay. Crap, Walt thought to himself. He didn't want to be at the big table where all eyes would wind up on him at some point during the meeting. What has Chris... hang on. I need to add a word here on here. O-U-D. What has Chris gotten me into now? Walt asked himself aloud. Reluctantly, Walt sat in the chair where his nameplate was. Everyone there was in uniform or a suit, except for Walt, who looked like he just stepped out of Once Upon a Time in the West or My Name is Nobody. He got confused looks from those whose nameplates were at the side tables as they filed in and took their places. The speakers in the ceiling crackled to life. 5-minute warning. I got to change this to thinking again because he says he's thinking. Great. This sounds like a missile launch, Walt thought to himself. Walt picked up the folder in front of him and started reading through it. In one section of the folder, it showed several possible trajectories of the asteroid with the probability for each occurring, including one that was called brushing contact. The trajectory they listed for the most probable was that it would pass 3/5 to 3/4 of the way towards the moon. Another showed likely scenarios for public reaction to different trajectories and when announced. These were even more scary than he thought. None of these, hang on, something's wrong with that sentence. These were even more scarier. Oh, these were even more scarier, comma. No, I don't need to put a comma. These are even more scary than the thought of a brushing contact. None of these sounded like there was much hope for the cities, and the sooner the announcement was made, the worse it got for the towns out in the countryside. The third section was possible geological responses to the gravitational forces of the asteroid on the Earth. What Walt noticed was missing was the effect of the asteroid's gravitational pull on the moon and vice versa. He thought back to the data his uncle had on this type of event for the book called Blood Moon Falling that he had just released about 6 months ago. The speakers came on. 2 minutes, please take your seats. Looks like we made it just in time, Chris says as he dropped a pile of papers on the table and sat next to Walt. Yeah, Walt said dryly. Chris stopped laying out the papers and looked questionably at Walt. What's wrong? Besides being seated at the big table, try the vast amount of data that's missing on the gravitational effects on the moon and from the moon. What data? Walt reached inside his coat and from the inside pocket pulled out his Kindle and started sorting through the books on it until he found the one he was looking for and opened it. He then swiped until he found the chapter with the missing data and handed it to Chris. Chris was still digesting the data when the telcon started. As before, those running the meeting, those running the telcon were on the monitors. It was the same room as before, with the administrator of FEMA on one side of the Secretary of Homeland Security and Deputy Director Cunningham of the FBI on the other. There was a fourth man seated next to Deputy Director Cunningham who looked somewhat familiar, but Walt couldn't quite place where he knew him from. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, began the Secretary of Homeland Security. We have called this conference call meeting. We have called this conference call meeting to provide more information on the asteroid event we are facing. However, before we begin, I'd like Scott Dunham to go over the security requirements for this meeting. Scott? The same slender man as before stepped in front of the table and read from a laminated card. This is a secret level briefing. All those participating in or listening to the security briefing conference call must follow all classified information, must classify all secret classified information protection. Under no circumstance will any of the information discussed be discussed with anyone from the press or with family members or anyone else who does not hold a U.S. government secret security clearance. Any violation of these orders will be prosecuted as a crime of treason. Thank you, Scott. The Secretary of Homeland Security spoke with a solemn voice. Folks, several weeks ago I informed you that we are facing what has been classified as a possible extinction level event. It has been 5 weeks since an asteroid of immense size was spotted emerging from behind the asteroid belt. The screen behind him again lit up with a CGI illustration of the solar system and a blinking marker for the asteroid. In the past 3 weeks, scientists at NASA have been working out the trajectory of the asteroid. However, there is some question as to the gravitational mass of the asteroid. Because of this, we still do not have a clear course that the asteroid will follow. In the packet in front of you, you'll find the current data we have. There are several trajectories listed, each based on probable gravitational mass estimates on how the data on the gravitational mass estimates based on the data we currently have. They are rated by percentage of their occurrence. I have Professor Raymond Johansson of NASA to explain this to us and shed some light on what we can expect. Professor Johansson. At the mention, froze for a second there. At the mention of Professor Johansson's name, Walt quickly took his Kindle back from Chris and went to the front of the book where the acknowledgments were. There it was, the second name on the list, Professor Raymond Johansson of NASA, for his contribution on gravitational charts and effect. Walt nudged Chris and pointed to the professor's name. The man next to Deputy Director Cunningham leaned forward and cleared his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, I would first of all like to point out that we still do not have enough data to plot the exact trajectory of the asteroid. He paused as he took his glasses off and cleaned them with his tie. I can say with some certainty that it will not hit Earth, as the briefing document shows for a brushing contact. We are still trying to determine the mass density and gravitational pull of the asteroid. We are backtracking its path using every astrological database we have access to without raising anyone's suspicions, as required by Homeland Security. He took a long breath. The problem is that unlike other asteroids, this one's surface is almost black. There is very little light reflection to see its path. There is very little light reflection to see its path. Okay, I see. I forgot to see, comma. Put a comma in there. And its path has not crossed in front of very many stars, so it's hard to find. It is hard to find it. To find it in older celestial photographs. Add to that, the gravitational forces of an object are not tied to its size, but to its density. This asteroid seems to be denser than we first thought. He paused then and continued more strongly. However, I must reiterate, I do not see any chance of it hitting the Earth. Walt leaned over to Chris and whispered in his ear, I need to ask the professor a question right now. Hang on, I need to update that. Right now. Chris looked at Walt. Chris looked surprised at Walt's request. Now, Walt said again sternly. Chris reached out and slid one of the keyboards on the table in front of him and typed a short message on it and sat back. The professor was expounding on how the asteroid would not hit the Earth when the Secretary of Homeland Security coughed. Excuse me, Professor. Yes, we have an urgent question from the group in Boise, Idaho. Professor nodded. I would be happy, of course, I'd be happy to try to answer it. Boise, what is your question? The Secretary of Homeland Security, and need to change that. The Secretary of Homeland Security asked with annoyance showing in his voice. Walt leaned forward towards the speaker's the speakerphone in the middle of the table. Morning, Professor. Sheriff Walt Rogers here, he said with a pause. Yes, Sheriff. Oh, hang on, I got to change these up here. Aha. Yes, Sheriff, the professor asked him, and his eyes opened wide. Walt Rogers, you said? Yes, Walt waited for a verbal response, but only got a visual one, so he continued. Blood, moon, falling. Hang on, I got to fix the dots between these as well. There we go. Blood, moon, fall. Froze again. Blood, moon, falling, he said loudly. Is this it? The professor slumped back in his chair and brought his hands up and pushed his glasses out of the way and pinched the bridge of his nose. What is blood, moon, falling, Professor? The Secretary of Homeland Security asked. The professor sighed. It is a scenario that you didn't want to discuss today. The Secretary of Homeland Security paled at the professor's statement. It is also the name of a best-selling book based on, sorry, I need to change from book to novel. It is also the name of a best-selling novel based on that scenario that was published 6 months ago. Professor, what is the likelihood of it? Walt asked. The probability is very likely. The Secretary of Homeland turned to an aide and asked, can we get it recalled? Walt laughed. No, sir, you can't. You can't. No, sir, you can't. I want to change it from can't to cannot. You cannot. It's on Amazon's best-selling list and 9th on the New York Times bestseller list, and it's climbing. My lawyer is currently working on a movie deal, so it can't be recalled or stopped. Nor would you want to, the professor added the professor. To do so would bring unwanted attention to the real thing. Besides, the book puts forth hope and survival of the human race. Excuse me, Deputy Director Cunningham interjected. Just what is the blood moon falling scenario? Well, Professor Johansson began. Hang on, I got to do this. Again. And then stopped. No, why don't you explain it, Sheriff? Why don't you explain it, Sheriff? After all, you came up with it. Actually, my uncle started the premise, and I just finished writing the book with input from the professor, Walt said. It's basically what we have here. In the book, there's a planetoid. It is a planetoid instead of a huge asteroid. It has the added hazard of the planetoid actually coming through the asteroid belt, capturing more than a few smaller asteroids in its gravitational wake. The planetoid passes between the Earth and the Moon at a tight angle, and its gravitational causes massive tidal surges around the world, as well as volcanic eruptions. Almost all satellites are pulled out of orbit, and then a couple days later, more asteroids than it had pulled from the than what it had pulled from the asteroid belt rained down on the Earth. The majority of them impact Eastern Europe and to India, and the largest on the Middle East, wiping out ISIL and most of the Middle East. Chuckles filled the room from where Walt was at, and can be heard coming over the speaker as well. Deputy Cunningham leaned forward with a smile. We can only hope. Actually, Professor Johansson started, I think we can forego any more of this fiction. The Secretary of Homeland Security injected. Right, Walt jumped in. Let's go to, hang on here. I got to change that to capital L. Let's go to some hard numbers. From the data NASA has provided today, things will be much worse than in my book. You can expect over 300-foot tides as the asteroid passes. If it passes during the daytime for us, daytime, the secretary asks, asked the Secretary of Homeland Security. Yes, the daytime, the professor joined in. If it passes during our daytime, that puts it on the opposite side of the world where the tides will be the highest and cause the greatest damage. If the attitude is right, it'll also put it passing towards the southern hemisphere. That we don't know, that we won't know for a couple more months of tracking. On the other hand, Walt continued, if it passes over the U.S. at night, you can kiss every single coastal city lower than 1,200 feet. You can kiss you can kiss every single coastal city lower than 1,200 feet, as well as the entire state of Florida, goodbye. That is, if the asteroid passes closer to the moon than to the Earth. If it passes closer, say 1/3 of the distance to the moon, then the tides would be over 600 feet higher. If the gravitational mass is greater than the initial reports, well, how did you put it, Professor? Professor Raymond Johansson took a deep breath and sighed. Worst case, tides over 5,000 feet high with surges in the funnel zones reaching as high as 7,000 feet. But that is worst case and does not fall in the parameters of the data. The Secretary of Homeland Security interrupted. Walt countered, but Mr. Secretary, it does meet the parameters of the data provided in this brief. If you take the increasing density and gravitational readings and carry them out for 3 or 4 months, correct, Professor? Yes, the professor said softly, and we will have more definitive data in 2 months after it passes Mars, but I can say it will not hit the Earth on this pass. This pass, the Secretary of Homeland Security practically shouted. Yes, this pass. We believe that it will fall into some sort of orbit around the sun. Whether it takes years, century, or millennia, it will come close to the Earth again, but not for quite a while. So, Mr. Secretary, Walt said flatly, I would suggest that we plan for relocation as many as we can from the coastal areas to the plain states. That's where I would start if I were president, but I'm not, and I have the people of my county to look after. Look, I know I'm just the youngest sheriff in Idaho's history. I may not know a lot, but I do know this. It is time to stop playing politics and being politically correct. It's time, as my uncle used to say, grab the bull by the horn and kick him in the balls. I realize the need to avoid panic, and I, for one, will not disclose any of the information until it is already in the news. However, I will do all I can to save my county So let's knock off of these fancy dancy reports that don't say any more than we already know. Give us some substantial help to save our people. Nearly everyone in the room muttered agreement to Walt's sentiment, and Walt could hear others over the speakers of the telecon. The Secretary of Homeland Security looked shocked that he'd been painted into the corner by a lowly sheriff, and all eyes were on him now. He hesitated for a minute. Unfortunately, Sheriff, I don't see how we can do what you propose. Well, Walt interrupted, expecting a defeatist reply. Start with farm subsidies to the farmers not to grow food. Tell those farmers to plant the highest yield crops they can, and the government will buy it all with the subsidies, or they won't get the subsidies. If the government pays top dollars in the farmers, and the farmers will produce more. If you got 10 months to stockpile food, then start taking all of the cargo containers that China is sending over and keep them. Use them for modular mini homes. Make tent cities from them if you have to. Don't make a couple of big cities. Make lots of smaller towns. Don't worry about staying clear of national and state parks. Use them for towns. They have some infrastructure already in place for park visitors. Deputy Director Cunningham coughed loudly. Mr. Secretary, he started. What? Barked the Secretary of Homeland Security. I do believe we now have a plan that has a chance of saving a lot of people. I concur, Professor Johansson agreed. The Secretary of Homeland Security frowned as he thought and considered Walt's word and turned off camera. Scott, give me the Secretaries of Agriculture and Secretaries of Agriculture and the Interior. And then back to the camera. Sheriff Rogers, how do I get a hold of you? Oh, hang on, it's supposed to be a small h because not a period. There we go. How do I get a hold of you? Walt slapped Chris on the back. Secretary Davies here has my private number, sir. Another man at the far end of the secretary's left spoke up. Wait a minute. You're the rancher that captured those terrorist bank robbers. And saved the team of FBI agents. Hang on, let me fix that. Two, three. Back one. There we go. Walt started. Chris jumped in. Yes, he is. The man that asked the question turned to the Secretary of Homeland Security. Boss, he's the man we tried to recruit to sack Davies' special ops team, but he was only 20 at the time. Well, Sheriff, it seems you are trusted amongst my staff. I try to be, sir. Good. I'll be in touch for more of your unorthodox insight. Let me fix those dots there. 1, 2, 3. I think it's best for us to do local breakout sessions to work on the relocation ideas of Sheriff Rogers and the feasibilities in your areas for setting up relocation towns. Then report back to us on your conclusions no later than the close of business day Thursday. The Secretary of Homeland Security nodded off screen, and the screen went blank. Almost immediately, as Walt stood up, he was besieged with introductions and questions. Everyone rushed forward to talk to him. He was getting crushed against the table as the ones in the back pushed the ones in front tighter against him. With his back pressed against the table, Walt decided that he needed to roll backwards onto the table to keep from being injured. Now standing on the table, the telecon suddenly realized what they were doing to him and stopped, while others seemed to clamor all the more. With most of them still shouting to him, Walt felt like he was in one of those stock market movies, looking down at Chris and Jesse's and mouth, "Plug your ears," and drew his Smith & Wesson 500 and pointed at the ceiling and cocked the hammer. On cue, Chris and Jesse clamped their hands over their ears, turning their heads away from Walt, and like a wave of kneeling subjects before a king, the participant staff quickly followed suit. In 2 seconds, the room was deathly quiet. Now, that is what will happen when food and water runs short. You just wanted information, and most of you lost control in your panic and desire to get it and not be left short. Imagine hundreds of thousands of desperate people trying to get food and water. Walt decocked the pistol and holstered it as he held up his other hand to maintain quiet. If you give Zach Davies your email, I will send you a discount code to Blood Moon Falling and The Dying Winter for free. Just get everything just about everything I could tell you here. You will find in the, I need to put a comma in there. Comma. Just about everything I could tell you here, you will find in those 2 books and more. Walt took a deep breath and looked around. Now, who's with the Idaho Office of Emergency Management? We had another one come in. How you doing? It's Daniel Berry Sports Highlight. Hey, Daniel. All right. And we are now starting chapter 4. Woo-hoo. All right. Hang a second. I need to unfuzz my eyes. This is why I do my writing at the computer in the living room where I got the exercise equipment, because the screen on that computer is much more sharp and clear than this Dell monitor here. And it's a lot easier on my eyes in there, but the laptop in there lost it. It's so old when Google Chrome updated, it shut down its ability to access the internet, because that computer is ancient in there, but it works great for writing books. All right, I'm just go back up here. Okay, chapter 4, Family Ties. Late March. Michael Rogers sat behind the wheel of the Lincoln Continental Stretch limo that his uncle Dan had left to his dad. As he drove his fiancée and her parents up the road. Hang on, I need to put some more information in here. Up this 7 mile long road of the ranch for his wedding. Still seated in the passenger seat was his fiancée, Jenna. In the seats behind him was his soon-to-be father-in-law, Colonel Kurt Smythe, and his wife, Colonel Candace Smythe. Jenna's maid of honor, Debbie, and 2 bridesmaids, Ruth and Tammy. They had been on the road a little over 8 hours, including 2 gas stops and a lunch break. And everyone was feeling a bit tired and anxious to get to the ranch. As they drove up the main entrance to the ranch, Michael slowed more than usual, not because of the light dusting of snow, but because of the sight before him. It's a sight in the road before him. There was a smaller than normal Clydesdale ridden by a cowboy in an off-white duster with the collar pulled up covering most of their face, and an oversized cowboy hat pulled down covering the rest. Michael stopped the limo about 10 feet from the unmoving apparition before him. Once the limo was stopped, The rider guided the horse around to the driver's window. When Michael rolled down the window, the rider leaned down and asked, "Michael, did you stop for dinner?" It was then that he realized the rider was female, as her jet black hair fell forward from the collar of the duster. "No, we came straight through after lunch, stopping once for gas." "Good. They've held dinner. I'll ride ahead and let them know you're coming." Up the driveway. She guided her horse backwards past the front of the limo, wheeled him around, and then turned in the saddle and shouted, "Welcome back to the ranch, Michael." She nudged the horse forward and yelled, "Go, Ajax." In what seemed like a single move, the horse vaulted the fence and made a beeline towards the house 7 miles away. "Who was that?" Jana asked from right beside Michael. "I don't know." "Well, I need to put a comma in there. "Well, she sure seemed to know you." Jana punched Michael playfully in the shoulder. I said I didn't know her." Michael groused about being teased. "We'll see." Jana teased him all the more. "But she does have some nice hair." "You may have to put a tracker on him," Jenna's best friend Debbie said with a giggle. "Maybe," Jenna said, and snuggled closer to Michael. Michael guided the limo up the long driveway that followed the creek that snaked up its way up the valley through the pastures and fields towards the ranch house compound. Along the way, they passed a campsite with several more cowboys dressed in identical fashion and 4 canvas pull tents. The cowboys all waved their hats at the occupants of the limo, and they could see that most of the cowboys were girls with rather unusual hair colors. "More friends of yours, Michael?" Jenna teased. "Now, Jenna, stop it," her mother scolded. "They probably work for Walt, and they're just being friendly." "That one can be friendly to me. He looks really cute," Debbie cooed. "But the ranch hands don't camp out like that," Walt said with confusion in his voice. "I wonder what's going on." When they reached the house, they saw the same Clydesdale tied to the hitching rail of the small pole barn off to the side of the house. Michael under the porch chalet in front of the house. Michael got out of the limo and ran around to open the passenger door and ran around to the passenger side and opened the doors for the ladies, offering his hand to help them out of the car. And he welcomed them to the ranch. As they walked up several of the steps to the house, Jana's mother noticed the cowgirl from earlier standing in the shadows. And it froze on me here. There we go. There it is. Okay. Standing in the shadows of the porch with someone she couldn't see clearly. They were facing each other, holding hands, and she could feel the electricity in the air between them, even from this distance. She nudged Jenna and she nudged Jenna and nodded towards the cowgirl and her unknown man. Jenna saw the two holding hands and looking at each other's eyes. I guess that maybe you don't know her, but somebody sure does," Jenna whispered to Michael. Michael looked over at the shadows where the somebody and the cowgirl were just in time to see them let go of each other's hands and her to hurry off to her horse. She vaulted the porch's railing and landed in the saddle just like in the movies. The figure in the shadows stepped towards them, and Michael immediately recognized Walt. "Well, we're here," he called out to Walt. "Who's your friend? She got me in a lot of hot water with Jenna." "No, she didn't." Jenna punched him in the arm again. See what I mean? Michael laughed. That's Sarah Ahern. She's one of the venture crew and Future Farmers of America. They help out a lot around on the ranch with the rescue horses, and I let them camp out whenever they like. Walt said as if it were nothing. They reached the head of the stairs at the same time. Walt waved everybody to the front door. Dinner's ready, is ready to be served, so come on in. Michael made introductions as each one passed Walt to go inside. Walt shook everyone's hand and welcomed to the ranch. Walt and Michael were the last ones to the door. Michael snickered to Walt as he pointed with his head back down the way towards where Sarah rode off to. Does she camp in the house too? Walt shot his brother a searing glare that said, "Shut up or I'll beat you till the sun comes up," and growled, "Never." Michael reared back and shouted, "Whoa, sorry, I didn't mean to offend. Sorry," Walt growled. It's a sore private subject. Michael nodded and hurried to catch up with the rest of his group in the grand hall. They're all standing in awe of the size of the room. "It's perfect," Jenna exclaimed. "Oh, Michael, you're so right. I love it." She spun around and hugged and kissed Michael. Then she broke off and hugged Walt. "Thank you for letting us use it." Walt just smiled and shrugged his shoulders a little. The dining room is to the left. Grandma and Anna have been working hard on dinner, so let's not keep them waiting. Come on, roll up. There we go. After dinner, the guys had been chased off into the grand hall, and Walt stoked the fire in the huge double-sided fireplace, while the ladies made short work of putting away the leftovers and dishes. Then they joined the men sitting around the now roaring fire. "What time will Mom and Dad get here?" Michael asked. "They should be here before lunch. I'm not sure when David, Sally, and their guests will be arriving." Walt answered before the next question could be asked, "But it should be sometime this evening." Walt's grandmother, Martha, spoke up. "I forgot to tell you they called earlier and said they'll be in about 9. Walt looked up at the clock on the fireplace mantel. "About 3 hours," he said to no one in particular. "So, Kurt," Stan broke the silence before it became awkward, "I understand you're both in the military. May I inquire which branch and rank?" Jenna's father smiled. "Air Force, but just until next summer. Then Candace and I will have 30 years each, and will retire with full pay. We are both colonels." "We were thinking about getting 20 or 30 acres where we could have a few horses, goats, chickens." Need to put an S on that. Chickens. Maybe a milk cow and some pigs. Something simple that will keep us busy and where the grandkids can come to have a good time. "Mom!" Jenna whined and rolled her eyes. "Come on, Jenna. It sounds cool," Debbie said. "It does sound nice. So much so because Candace has been suggesting we do it this summer." Kurt smiled at his wife, "But trying to find the right place will take some time. You see, It has to have a year-round stream, trees for firewood, a flat area for a runway and a hangar, and a good southerly exposure for solar panels. And not near the coast, Candace added as she looked at Walt, who was sitting in his usual spot with his back against the fireplace hearth. Yeah, she's been reading some disaster books lately and has been some strong opinions where we can't be. What books? Stan asked. Candace reached into her laptop bag and pulled out 3. Just some I heard about at a meeting. Twaki Time, The Dying Winter, and Blood Moon Falling so far. You should also read The Self-Reliant Farm, Stan suggested, with a glance at Walt, who was staring deeply at Candace as if she was a puzzle to be solved. When was this meeting? Walt asked cautiously. January 6th, 1100 Eastern. Walt scrunched his lips tight for a couple seconds and asked, what area are you looking at? Where would you suggest? C-A-N. I got to add something to it here. Candace. Come on. D-I. Right. Hang on. I got to check out, make sure I spelled this word right here. Shift F7. And it's coming up with, we couldn't find anything similar. Okay. That's not the right way to spell that word. Okay. Give me a second. I got to look out the proper way to spell this word here. And let's see here. Let me see if this is right. Yeah, okay, that's the proper way to spell it. Let's go to here and fix this word. Y-L-Y. She asked very coyly. There we go. Where would you suggest? Well, there's a place not far from town, 120 acres with 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, couple of barns, two streams, lots of trees. Not sure if you can land a plane there as it is. Maybe if you do a bit of logging. How much? 385, I believe. That's all, Kurt and Candace exclaimed. Yes, when can we go see it? Candace asked. Hang on, let me put excitedly on there. Yep. Excitedly. Mom, really? Jenna protested. Oh, let me put that on there. Well, I can show you some pictures on the computer right now if you want. Walt smiled as he pushed himself up from the hearth. Okay, Candace said as she hopped up from the couch, dragging Kurt with her. Really, guys? Jenna continued to protest their interest in looking at houses instead of working on the wedding. Don't worry, Walt said. Your wedding will be very special, and we have all day tomorrow to rehearse. You should be relaxing. Go have a Magnum bar. Magnum bar? Where? The girls exclaimed. Chest freezer by the side door off the kitchen in the mudroom. Walt hollered over his shoulder as he led Kurt and Candace to his office. In his office, Walt brought up a website of the real estate broker that first Dan and now he used. He typed in some of the parameters and scrolled the results until he found the property he remembered. After reviewing the photos and the information about the property, Kurt and Candace were very excited about it. A quick call to Joss and the property was secured. Hang on, I want to change this. Walt said that Walt said he would carry the loan for them on condition that Kurt would do as Candace was pushing for and retire and be there by August 1st. Kurt smiled sheepishly and said in surrender, "How can I refuse such terms?" About 9 o'clock, there was a knock on the side door, followed by a female voice calling out to Walt and Anna. Sarah walked through the kitchen into the grand hall in her full cowgirl regalia and announced that an RV was slowly heading up from the road. Then she asked Anna if she could borrow the 5-gallon hot pot for the night. Anna said sure and told her to go ahead and get it. Sarah thanked her and went to the closet by the side door and grabbed the pot. 10 minutes later, Dave and Sally came in the front door with 6 other people. "Hey, everyone," Dave called out as he held open the door for the others. "This is Nikki and Brian and their parents, Eric and Diane, and their younger brother and sister, Randy and Wendy." Okay, almost 11 o'clock. Okay. Where I'm at, okay. All right, let's get at this thing here. All right, my eyes are fogging up again. I rub my eyes. There we go. All right, and we had someone else just come in. After all the introductions were done, Eric asked where excuse me. Eric asked where would be the best spot to park the RV. It was a Class A pusher type RV. It was a 45-footer with 3 slide outs and hydraulic levelers. Eric explained that they were test driving it for the weekend. This was the 3rd one they had tested and had 2 more they were looking at before they making their final choices. Stan volunteered to show Eric where to park the RV and help him get it hooked up to the power and water. After they had the RV all set up, everyone turned in for the night. The next morning after breakfast, they had the first wedding rehearsal walkthrough to figure out where they wanted everybody. Walt's parents, Mark and Mary, had called and said they would be there around 10 o'clock with Mary's parents, Thomas and Rebecca, and not to wait for them before having the first walkthrough. The walkthrough went as expected. A lot of stopping and going over it again, then changing everything up and starting over. By the time Mark and Mary arrived, some nerves were getting a little frazzled, to say the least. Their arrival Their arrival had taken it. Their arrival has taken a sign for to take a break and relax a bit by everyone except Jenna. Being the bride, she was still panicking that they would not be ready by the next day when the guests began to arrive, and that she was letting everybody know it. Suddenly, the front door flew open, and Sarah came striding into the room, her jet black hair and duster flung open behind her. "Damn it, Walt! Chris has been blowing up my phone trying to get a hold of you," she said as she tossed her cell phone to Walt. "Hey, Chris, I left my phone in the office." Walt's face quickly grew dour as he listened to Chris. "Let me get on the sat phone. Let me get on the sat phone, okay? I'll be with you in a minute." He tossed Sarah's phone back to her as he ran towards his office. "Who's Chris?" Mark asked as soon as Walt was out of the room. "Special agent in charge, Chris Davies, U.S. Department of Homeland Security," Sarah spoke softly. Candace gasped quietly, but not quietly enough. "What?" Kurt asked as he moved to her side. "Sorry, it's classified," she said, and her eyes turned cold. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Nothing, I hope," Candace answered her daughter, then looked at Sarah, who was walking back towards the door. "Is there?" Sarah just stopped short of the door and sighed heavily and spoke. "I don't know for sure. I think it's just Marston stirring up trouble in town again." And as she closed the door behind her, I need to put a comma in there. There we go. Closed the door behind her. She said to herself, "I should have shot him months ago." Back inside, Mary suggested they break early for lunch and get back to the rehearsal on a full stomach. With tensions as high as they were, and everybody agreed. Everybody readily agreed. I've got a couple more people coming in. Moon over Miami, welcome. Yeah. So I'm up on in the middle of chapter 4, doing the proofreading and corrections as I go along. Actually, I better not have enough corrections. I better hit the save button. There it goes. It's saved. Don't want to have to redo all those corrections, you know. All right. After lunch, they had a couple more run-throughs, and they went smoother than the morning rehearsal. The last one went so well that Jenna said it was good enough, and she didn't want to do another run-through. Stan was so happy that he offered to give a tour of the ranch. As he gave the non-family guests the grand tour, he highlighted the solar power and wind hydrogen production system and how they were able to keep the barns and pole barns warm for the cattle and horses. Kurt and Candace, to some extent, were especially interested in the reason for using hydrogen instead of batteries to supplement their solar system as a backup. Stan stated simply that Dan had crunched the numbers and the cost of battery replacement every 5 years or so was too expensive. Hydrogen doesn't go bad and keeps forever. And that the area heaters that burn hydrogen last longer than those powered by electricity and therefore were cheaper to use in the long run. When it was time for dinner, Walt insisted that having a barbecue on the patio using the large outdoor kitchen that Walt's Uncle Dan had built there. The patio itself was about 75 feet wide and went from the house to the gentle sloping hillside some 80 feet away. There were two rectangular gazebos that had every other side open. The gazebos were 16 feet across with a 6-foot round pedestal tables in the middle, with several chairs against each wall panel. Outside of the gazebo, along the side of the house, there were 3 rows of tables and chairs. When Walt led everybody out to the patio, they were surprised to see the Venture crew cowboys busy cooking. They had the raised smoker pit going with 50 pounds of brisket and a dozen very large Dutch ovens in the recessed fire pit, with 4 duster-drabbed Ventures moving the ovens and coals around in a dizzy fluid ballet as they checked their contents. These are members of the Venture crew from town, Walt said as he stepped out on the patio. They started coming here as part of the Future Farmers of America, working with the rescue horses that Anna gets. Nowadays, I let them camp out anywhere on the ranch they want, and they help out by taking care of fences and livestock. Tomorrow, they will decorate the house for the wedding. What's a Venture crew? Let me put it. So I'm going to make that Jenna asking that one. Confused. Before Walt could answer, Amy Young spoke up from the fire pit. Ventures are the co-ed high adventure branch of the Boy Scouts of America. Our ages are 14 to 21st birthday, Jerry Gray continued. We run the program, but have adult supervisors to help keep us out of trouble, Danny Rourke added. We do all sorts of things like cavalcades, whitewater rafting, rock climbing, and other cool stuff, Cindy Montoya added. We gentlemen acquiesce to the higher intelligence of the fairer component of the species to achieve elevated consequences of our endeavors. Randy Cassidy chimed in. Huh? All the adventurers said as they shook their heads and stared at Randy. Randy, that was mighty nice, but if you don't stop using those $20 words that we don't understand, I'm going to make you clean all the pots by yourself, Jerry fired off. Now say it again in common tongue. Randy smiled broadly. I said us boys are smart enough to let you smarter ladies make the decisions because you always make better and funnier. Always get us better and funnier results for any activity than we do. Why didn't... I forgot a word in here. Why didn't you just say that in the first place, Amy said. Because it's more challenging to string all those $20 words together and have them make sense. Jerry walked over to Randy, put an arm around him, and gave him a quick hug. Sorry I jumped on you. Good job. Randy beamed like a lighthouse and hang on, change it from, I got to change that word there. And caused the wedding party to chuckle. So, crew, what's for dinner? Tammy walked over from the fire pit. Besides the brisket you provided, we have wild honey baked beans, cornbread, fresh biscuits, corn on the cob, cooked in garlic butter, overloaded mashed potatoes with a side of sour cream, smoked bacon and 4 blend cheese, chopped kale cooked with butter, red wine vinegar, and a hint of molasses, bow tie pasta with pesto and diced grape tomatoes, and monkey bread for dessert. And only the bride and maid of honor can pass on seconds if they want to. That is, Danny added with a evil grin. Very good. I think this is one of your best spreads. Oh, sorry. I think this may be your best spread yet. Sorry, there's something wrong in this. I think this may be. There we go. It needs to have a word in here. One or two words of your best spreads yet. There we go. Now it makes sense. Shady Hill Homestead. Hey, how's it going? All right. Okay, for those just joining, we're in the middle of chapter 4. Walt, who is the main character, has already received. He's the main character. He's been at 21 years of age. He's been elected sheriff. His friend at DHS has got him involved in a top secret program where they found out that an asteroid is heading towards Earth and it'll be there sometime in October. This is now late March. Walt's brother Michael is getting married, and that's what's going on here. This is the wedding party, getting ready for the wedding tomorrow. They just had the rehearsal, and this is the dinner for the rehearsal. Side note, one of the Venture crew here that is cooking, Sarah Ahern, she and Walt are secretly seeing each other. She is just 18. He's 21. Oh, wait, scratch that. No, this is March. She's now 19. She is now 19. And so, but they are keeping their relationship quiet while he prepares the county as best as he can in supplies for the coming asteroid, which nobody knows about other than governmental people. Okay, so let's continue on. Where was I at? Thank you, Tammy said. This was the first large meal that I had to plan by myself, but I couldn't have pulled it off with everybody's help. You lead and we follow your directions, Amy said. You planned it really thoroughly. That's the hard part. Thanks, Amy. It sure is warmer than I thought it would be, Diane Thomas said as she followed Brian and Nikki, who were still being led by Sally and David. Sally and David are Walt's brother and sister. Brian and Nikki is Michael's fiance's brother and sister. Okay, for those that came in late. All right. Stan pointed out that the patio had radiant heaters suspended 12 feet above them that were using hydrogen, not propane, to heat the patio, and they would be warm enough for the next several hours. Several of the ventures suddenly started moving the Dutch ovens to one of the gazebos, and a couple others pulled the slab of brisket from the smoker. Grab your plates and line up. Dinner is served, Danny shouted. One of the ventures grabbed a metal triangle and went to the corner of the house and started ringing it towards the barn. Come and get it before I eat it all. Several of the wedding party chuckled. Don't laugh, Walt cautioned. I've seen him eat. He can eat a side of beef by himself, so you better keep it on your plate. Oh, Sheriff, I said I was sorry. I thought you were done. Everyone laughed and made their way to where the food was being served. All right. At 9 o'clock the following morning, Sarah and the Venture crew came into the grand hall carrying boxes of decorations and started putting them up. By lunchtime, everything was decorated for Michael and Jana's wedding. They'd even decorated the patio and cleared an area for dancing. They swapped out the clear light bulbs in the overhead string for festive colored ones. After a lunch of leftover sorry, my eyes are fuzzing on me here. After a lunch of leftover brisket, cornbread, and biscuits and baked beans, Jenna noticed the venture crew were starting to leave. Jenna asked them why they weren't staying for the wedding. Sarah explained that they were going to change into their uniforms and that they would be taking care of the valet parking for the guests and acting as ushers. Then Sarah and three others went out another door and headed down to the horse corral. At 2:30, the first guests started to arrive. By 3:30, everyone was seated and the ceremony began. There were about 80 guests in the grand hall, not counting immediate family. The grand hall was about 3/4 full when the ventures filed in quietly and filled the back row. Michael and Jana shared a unique sense of humor. When Michael asked Walt to be his best man, Jenna asked him to wear his dress uniform as sheriff. I need to put that in his wear his sheriff's SHERI sheriff's dress uniform. There we go. There now it makes a little better sense. Walt, in turn, agreed only if he got to pick one of the groomsmen and invite a couple of guests of his own. Reluctantly, Michael agreed, and during the rehearsal kept asking where and who the mystery groomsman was. Walt simply said, "Don't worry, he'll be here." 30 minutes before the ceremony was to start, Walt snuck Michael's high school best buddy, DHS agent Jesse Carter, in his dress DHS uniform, into Walt's office, where they were using it as a staging area for the wedding procession. When Michael turned around and saw Jesse, he about came unglued with joy. Michael grabbed Jesse in a bear hug and wouldn't let go for over a minute. "Where did Walt find you?" Michael bubbled excitedly. My time arrived in town when Walt had to rescue the FBI agents when their prisoner got loose from him," Jesse said solemnly. "And since then, we've been helping Walt get the county's EOC up and functional." "Wow, this is great," Walt says. "Wait a minute, you're the mystery groomsman?" "Yeah, Walt wanted to surprise you." "Hey, brother," Walt began. And every time Walt called Michael brother, it was usually something bad, and Michael's eyes widened. "If you want, I'll swap places with Jesse and he can be your wingman like in high school." Michael's mouth dropped open. His eyes started to tear. "You would do that for me?" "Of course. Why do you think I asked you to let me pick one of the groomsmen? I knew you'd want Jesse by your side." Michael reached over and hugged Walt. "You're the best brother I could ever ask for," he snuffled. "Hey, don't go crying. You'll get all red and ruin your wedding pictures." "Right." He snuffled again and wiped his eyes. "Well, I better let Jenna know what's going on," Kurt said as he made to leave the room. "Don't tell her that Michael got a little choked up with my surprise. We don't want her to lose it too and come out with running mascara," Walt said quickly. "Good idea," Kurt smiled. "That would definitely set her off. We can tell her later how choked up he got." And he winked at Michael. The wedding went off without a hitch. Michael didn't break down, neither did Jenna, until after the ceremony, when Debbie spilled the beans and told Jenna about what happened when Walt brought Jesse into the room. However, she was able to pull it together for the rest of the afternoon. When the time came for the throwing of the bouquet and garter, Jenna noticed Sarah slipping through the side door into the slipping through a side door back into the house, and Walt slipping through another door. Sorry, that sentence, something's wrong. I did something wrong in that sentence. Let me get it figured out here. This other way, out of the house. There we go. Now it's right. Let me hit save. The two of them are sneaking out. They're not coming in. The two of them are sneaking out. All right. So Jenna noticed Sarah slipping through a side door out of the house, and then Walt slipping through another door. She leaned over to Michael and whispered in his ear, "Why would Walt and Sarah not want to try for the bouquet and garter?" "I think they want to, but for some reason they can't. Walt snapped at me and got very broody when I asked about her. There's a dark secret of some sort between them. So I dropped it. So I dropped the subject." "Oh," was all that Jenna said with a puzzled expression on her face. A couple of hours later, after dinner, when most of the guests were still dancing, Michael and Jenna sneaked out the back door to make their getaway. But when they got to the limo, they found Sarah leaning against the driver's doors, flipping the keys on her finger like she was twirling a pistol. "You're not taking the limo," she said with a smile, and pointed to a dark green Ford Explorer. "All your stuff has been moved into it. Walt was going to give it to you when you got back, but I don't like the chase the new couple around game that everyone's planning." "Yeah, it is kind of a lame tradition," Michael said with a weak smile. "Then your choices are turn left where everyone chases you, or turn right and head out towards the old mine, and the Ventures will be your outriders to guide you out the back way." Michael looked at Jenna, who nodded to the right. "The back way it is." Jenna hugged Sarah and whispered, "Thank you," and took a deep breath and spoke seriously. "I know it's none of my business, but you and Walt, don't ask and please don't." Sarah took Jenna's hand and gave him a gentle squeeze. "Don't ask and please don't talk or ask about us to anyone, okay?" "Okay, I just thought you'd make a great couple." Sarah sighed and looked down and said softly, "One of these days." Jenna squeezed Sarah's hands and released them. "Then I'll keep you guys in my prayers." "Thanks." With a nod from Sarah, Danny Rourke and her father Jerry walked over to her, and Sarah handed Jerry the keys. Danny climbed into the limo. "They're going to be your decoys. Let them go first, and when they're past the front of the house, then you take off." "Thanks," Michael said, and then added, "You're not going to get in trouble with Walt." "Nah, he'll get a kick out of it." And then added with a wicked grin, "Or he'll get a kick out of it." Later that evening, after guests had left and everything was cleaned up, had his parents and their parents, Kurt and Candace, meet with him in the grand hall by the fireplace. So I need to put an "and" in there. It almost sounds like Kurt and Candace are Walt's parents. And A-N-D. There we go. Kurt and Candace. Meet with him in the grand hallway by the fireplace while everyone else was in the theater room watching The Hobbit. There is something I need to talk to you all about, but I really can't, Walt began. I can't exactly tell you why, except that Candace already knew before they got here, and she can't say either. Huh, grumbled Mary's father, Thomas. So what can you tell us? Read some books, Candace offered. Great. Which book? Thomas said, not liking to dance around. Well, Candace began, looking at Walt. We can't exactly say, Walt finished for her. But as one of my deputies likes to say, prepare ye every needful thing. We can't say what is up, but everyone needs to prepare for whatever comes. He paced slowly back and forth in front of the hearth, playing with his month-old goatee. You're being rather vague, son, Mark said cautiously, not wanting to fuel anyone's frustration. I know, but this is a touchy situation, Walt said with obviously trepidation. We can't tell you what's going on or exactly what you need to do, but we need you to act on faith and try to figure it out on your own. Okay. And once you figure it out, you mustn't tell anyone. Why? Thomas said with agitation that was slowly that agitation that with that Thomas said with aggravation showing. I need to change that to showing openly in his voice. Because your lives will be in danger if you don't follow their instructions, came a voice from the other side of the fireplace. What? And who's that? Were the replies from those seated in front of Walt. Walt hung his head in exasperation. Sarah, what are you doing here? Sarah walked around from the other side of the fireplace, decked out in her gunfighter garb. Hang on. Once again, and was shaking her head slightly, looking out for your back side. Hang on, let me change this here. 1, 2, 3. What do you know? Candace asked Sarah and turned to Walt. Did you tell her anything? He didn't tell me anything. I only know that what I've been able to piece together over the last several months, she said as she slid into Walt's favorite spot, sitting on the hearth with her back against the fireplace stones. The books they want you to read are Blood Moon Falling, Tawaki Time, and The Dying Winter. There may be a couple others, but those are the ones that stand out. How do you know that? Walt and Candace asked simultaneously. Janet told me you were talking about those books last night and asked me about them. That, and Walt has a stack of them on his desk. What are you doing in my office? Walt asked, then with a smile added, oh, the sheriff's office. I guess that means you brought the books here and you want to give them out, but we're worried about breaking some sort of non-disclosure thing. See, I am a detective, she said. She smiled at him and looked back at the others. Now, the reason they can't tell you more, if I've deduced this, hang on, I need to change those dots to the proper ones I'm using now. 1, 2, 3. If I am deducing this right, is that it is a top secret national security thing that would get you in trouble, that they would get in big trouble if they said anything directly, non-disclosure and all that. So because of that, they are desperately trying to dance around what they can't talk about and dropping obscure hints and stuff. How the halibut do you know that? Walt asked, this time very seriously. Looking Walt in the eyes, Sarah started with a deep breath. I really didn't know. I guessed. And with all your meetings with Sack Davies and his team, the warehouse space the county has been leasing under your signature, the cargo containers here and there, fuel trucks, refrigeration units, and other stuff gave me clues. And the fact that you still haven't asked me out on a real date. You've been too busy getting ready for the end of October event. What? Mary exclaimed, looking wide-eyed back and forth between Walt and Sarah. I don't count the 5 dinners I cooked for you here because Anna, Stan, and Martha ate with us, or our horseback riding times as dates, although you do reveal more about your concerns than you think during those rides. Sarah looked sadly at Walt's mom and breathed a deep sigh, and then looked back at Walt. She gestured to Mary. As she gestured to Mary, but you need to take care of your families first, as well as the county, before you can worry about your personal pleasure with me. And I need to change those dots to the proper format. There we go. Walt stood there trying to think of what to say when Sarah got up from leaning against the fireplace, as smoothly as a cat on the prowl. She slipped her Stetson hat back on and walked over to Thomas. Give him a break. He's trying to live up to his oaths as sheriff and as a Rogers and not go to prison. Thomas nodded and breathed out heavily through his nose. Good. Then she turned to Candace and Kurt. I hear you two are buying some property up Jackson Canyon. That's good land up there. 2 streams year round, room for a large garden. She paused before continuing. Get some solar panels and batteries. Ion lithium phosphate or the new, or that's what I need to put in there. I need to update it a little bit. Or the new silver ones. There we go. If you can afford them. And a bigger propane tank, much bigger. Sarah walked up to Walt. The house is big, but you need to get a couple of modular homes installed up above the leach field, and some camp pit toilets, 3 or 4 at least. Then she hugged them and left towards the kitchen without another word. Wow, Thomas said in shock. She sure is sure of herself. And right too, huh, Walt? Stan said to Walt with a smile. I don't know how, but yeah, she's pretty much spot on. Then thought to himself, God, I got to marry her soon. So, Mark said as he stood up and started pacing off to the side, there's something very important you so desperately wanted to tell us, but you can't because you're prohibited by law. It has something to do with national security. Candace knows about it. Knows about it too. 00. I surmise. And I surmise that has something to do with her specific duties. We need to get prepared for this event, which is supposed to take place the end of October. but we can't tell anyone because it would cause Walt and Candace legal problems and could jeopardize our survival. But the books you have published contain important hints to this, but you can't come out and say it. This is going to happen, and get ready. But somehow Sarah figured it out. Hang on, let me change that to one word. There we go. Somehow Sarah figured it out and told us what she could without coming right on saying it. Am I right so far? We can neither confirm nor deny any of that, Candace spoke before Walt could. Mark smiled. Would you say, hypothetically, of course, for instance, that it would be much safer here than on the coast? Walt held up his hand to stop Candace from saying anything. He thought for a few seconds and smiled. You know, Dad, when I was growing up, for some reason, I always felt safer on the ranch than in Seattle. That's why I started bugging about hang on, I got to change that. About me. There it is. About me coming to stay with Uncle Dan. I just felt safer here. Sarah walked back to the room with an armful of books and dumped them on the coffee table. Then tossed an FRS radio to Walt. Walt, why don't you take Mrs. Smythe down to the barn and show her the horses? Then she turned and went back to the kitchen. Walt looked after her puzzled and then shrugged his shoulders and motioned for Candace to follow. Sorry, this last part of the sentence here is right. Motion for Candace to go towards the door. After Walt and Candace had left, the others began to speculate what the end of October event was. After several minutes, Sarah came back in with a tray loaded with ice cream cups and toppings. You know, hang on, I need to change the dots around again. 1, 2, 3, yeah. I just like the way the separated dots worked and the dots together. Oops, I hit the wrong button. One, two, I fat fingered that. Okay. Did that one there? Did that go back again? Change that one. 1, 2, 3. You know, she started and paused for effect. You might not spend so much energy on what specifically it is, and more on how to prepare for that. On how prepared you are, food, water, and survival gear, first aid, and skill-wise, to survive a major disaster. Because that's what this is, a friggin' major disaster. You know, Tawaki. She looked at the blank stares from everyone but Mark and set the tray down and waved her hands in frustration. Really? Hang on, let me fix this one here. 1, 2, 3. Mr. Rogers, you want to explain the acronym why I take this into the theater room? She picked up the tray of ice cream cups and toppings and walked off, muttering a little too loudly, Walt, I'm going to kick your butt. Well, Mark spoke slowly, chuckled at what Sarah said on her way out. Tawaki means the end of the world as we know it. The final game changer. No going back, at least for several generations. Thomas whistled. Oh, shit. And the others sat in shock. Worse than that, SHTF, or shit hitting the fan, is a very major but relatively short disaster on the scale of a couple of years to 5 to 20 years to recovery time before things are back to normal. 9/11 was a major event, but not a shift event, not a SHTF event. Waukee is a generation or three before recovery begins. No government, frontier law and justice. The fastest gun wins. The biggest guy wins. The strongest community wins. And Mark chuckled. And I'm out of a job. So what do we do? How do we plan for something we don't know what it is? Rebecca asked in a panic. Well, we could, I suppose we could check with Sarah and ask her opinion. After all, she seems to know as much as Walt and Candace, but doesn't have the restriction placed on her, Mary mused. We could, but I get the feeling she's going to hold back any more information beyond what she's given already out of loyalty to Mark. Love, Martha said softly. Love, several of them asked. Her loyalty is that she's deeply in love with Walt, and he is with her, Martha clarified. But for some reason they won't or can't act on it. Oh, sorry, let me goop out of my eyes. There we go. Okay, but that doesn't get us any closer to what we need to do, Thomas said as he took his wife's hands. They helped us all they can. So what do we do? Walt has been giving us more responsibility in running the ranch and the other businesses that Dan set up, Stan said flatly. In doing this, he has, well, I got to change these dots again. 2, 3. Go. He has, well, dang it. Well, locked us to the ranch. He wants us here. He's been following Dan's plan in building up the ranch to be solely self-sustaining, but at a very accelerated rate. Are you saying he wants us all to move here? Rebecca asked in disbelief. Well, hang on, we put a comma there. Well, he sure has set us up with a place nearby really quick, Kurt added. Yeah, and a really nice setup, and independent yet close, Thomas observed. Don't forget what Sarah told Walt, Mary said with sudden energy. Remember? Hang on, I got to change that to capital R. Remember? The house is big, but you need a couple modular homes installed above the leach field and some camp pit toilets, 3 or 4 at least. I think she knows he wants to move us here by October 1st. If that's so, then what do we need to do to get prepared? Sell everything we own on the coast and buy land up here, Thomas said, surprisingly enthusiastic about the idea. But not just land. Walt has land, but supplies to live off of for several years, Mary corrected. Freeze-dried food, canning equipment, stuff like that. Ugh, freeze-dried food storage, Rebecca groaned. I can't imagine what that stuff tastes like. There is some really good stuff out there. You ought to check into it as soon as you get back, Mary said. I found some really great recipes and you can't tell it's freeze-dried. Really? That casserole you like so much? Mary replied, yeah. Rebecca questioned her daughter cautiously. Freeze-dried, Mary said proudly. Back to the topic, Thomas interjected. Okay, several years, he questioned. If this is Milwaukee, like Mark said, and we would have to agree, and then, I would have to agree Several years, not 2 or 3, but 5 or 6, Kurt said. Candace is making up some retirement and relocation budgets, most of which she doesn't know I've seen. I don't think she was ready to show me yet. And well, she created some plans for long-term food storage. For the two of us, 5 years, and some for 4 people, and some for 4 people plus babies, some for even longer time frames. Whoa, babies, the next generation, Mark said as a light bulb went on in his brain. I totally forgot, not forget. I totally forgot about that. Babies, supplies, sanitary supplies, toilet paper for 10 years. 10 years? Yeah, we may start recovering somewhat in 5 as far as food production goes. What about the stuff we can't grow or make? Clothing too. Bulk fabric, buttons, zippers, socks, shoes. There's a lot to consider, Mary added. And what if this doesn't materialize? Rebecca asked. Thomas hugged her. We'll be stocked for our retirement. Guys, Stan interrupted. Several of them answered, what? I think I know what the event is. What? Mark, hang on, I need to add a little more description here. What? Mark asked. And Sir P.R.I. in surprise. Stan held up the books that Sarah dropped off and wiggled one of them titled Blood Moon Falling. This is a planetoid that passes so close to Earth that it causes all sorts of disasters, earthquakes, volcanoes, weird weather. I'm going to change the title this out. Tsunami waves, total and permanent collapse of the power grid, water supplies, gas supplies, everything. It can't be that. There are too many observatories that would spot it, and the information would leak out by now. Not if the government clamped down on it and threatened anyone who talked about it. It's got to be this or something similar. The other books are part of the series. Are you sure? Rebecca asked in desperation for it not to be that. Couldn't it be something almost as bad? I don't think so, Stan hesitated in a way that caught everybody's attention, so they just stared at him. After a couple seconds, he spoke. Last week, I heard Walt talking to this guy. He pointed to the back cover of the book. Professor Raymond Johansson. They were talking about something in October. Okay, Mark spoke. We have a good idea of what we need to prepare for. The question is, what do we need to do? We may need to build some protected greenhouses. Why protected? Well, Professor Howard Earp and I have been working on a modular aerospace system for NASA, and the last month our funding got doubled and Homeland Security and Department of Interior took over the project. They want units that can produce higher yield crops per cycle and more cycles per year. Units that are mobile and protected. We can do the same thing here. There's the old mine that Dan bought. Walt has been letting the Ventures use it for camping and spelunking. Stan interjected. Yes, that would go. Excuse me. That would work. That would work great. It would be protected from volcanic ash and harsh weather, and we could store food in the mine as well, Mary said enthusiastically. I think food-wise, we're already set with cattle and other supplies that Walt has been stockpiling for the last several months, Martha said. We should concentrate on other supplies that we need. We can write down things we come up with and do group emails to work out details. That's all good for stuff, but what about medical needs? Doctors, dentists, pharmacists, and such. What do we do about that? Thomas asked. Right now we're all in fairly good shape, but in a couple of years, an old-fashioned lifestyle is harder on the body and accidents do happen. Well, Michael only has a couple more semesters left for his degree, so there's our dentist, but medical doctor, I don't know. We need to ask Walt if he has any plans in play for that, Mark responded. If he hasn't, we can pick up the ball for him. I might be able to help with that, Kurt finally spoke up. Yes! Shara almost shouts from the other side of the fireplace. You got it! Thank you so much! Thank you, Thomas asked, totally confused. Yes, thank you, because now Walt won't be distracted worrying about what you are doing, what you are going to do. If you will be safe in a safe location, he can get the job of getting the county ready, completed quicker, without distraction from worrying about you. Then she added softly, or me. Sarah said as she pulled out a small radio. Walt, go ahead, Walt's voice came back over the radio. Come back up. They figured it out. Now they need to talk to you about stuff you can talk about. Now that you guys are taken care of, I got one more to the job before I can relax. Sarah turned and left the room with a wicked smile on her face. Entering the room, Sarah saw David and Nikki snuggling in the back row on the left side, and Brian and Sally doing the same on the right side. She approached each couple and whispered that she needed to talk to them outside of the room. They quickly followed her out into the hall and then into the rec room on the other side. What's up? Just a second first, Sarah said and stood there thinking, then continued. David, stand here. Nikki, stand here. Brian, here, and Sally, here. She had him stand about 3 feet apart, David facing Nikki, Brian facing Sally. Brian and David on one side, Nikki and Sally on the other. Then she stood between and slightly behind Brian and David and Brian with her right hand on Brian's left shoulder and left hand on David's right shoulder. Now, I need you all to be totally front and honest with me. Please. Brian, how do you feel about Sally? David, how do you feel about Nikki? Brian, you go first. What is this all about? Smack! Sarah slapped the back of Brian's head. I asked the questions. How do you feel about Sally? I feel she's the only one for me. And he flinched. David, she's smart, intelligent. She's also hot in bikinis. She's kind of dumb animal. Smack! I didn't ask what makes her special. I want to know how you feel. I want to know how you feel about her. I'm head over heels in love with her. Ditto, Brian added. Sarah smiled and brought her hands to the back of their knees, quickly driving them down to one knee. Ladies, present your hands as if you feel likewise. They both quickly stepped forward with their hands held out in front of them. Sarah stepped back. Take their hands, dummies. They did quickly. David cleared his throat and said, love of my life, will you marry me? Brian asked, only one for me, will you marry me? The girls happily answered yes. Freeze. Don't move. Stay as you are. She quickly back into the theater room and brought Erica and Diane back with her. Okay, one more time. David and Brian and David glanced at each other and looked back at the women in front of them and repeated, love of my life, will you marry me? You're the only one for me, will you marry me? Nikki and Sally repeated, yes. Okay, what's going on out here? Oh. Okay. Excuse me when I check out the window. I heard some thumping going on outside here. Okay. I'll be back in a minute. I got to go outside. All right, I'm back. Yeah, there was some loud thumping out here. It was actually in the neighbor's yard. Some drums that are moving around. It sounded like someone was getting into my car or my pickup out here. So, all right, where was I? I'm gonna get my eyes refocused again here. Put the other glasses on. There we go. Okay, this time you can kiss, Sarah said as she turned to a shocked Eric and Diane. Mr. and Mrs. Thomas, please come with me to the grand hall. And she held her arms out to guide them in front of her. Upon reaching the grand hall, Sarah ushered them over to where the other parents were talking. Actually, I need to change that. She shouldn't be on a first name basis with Walt's parents yet. So, Mr. and Mrs. Rogers, the Thomases have something to tell you. And we save that. Save all. Eric and Diane looked at each other for a second. Then Eric spoke. It seems that love is in the air. Our boys have asked our daughters to marry them. And the girls said yes. What? When? Where? Were the questions that came like an avalanche, followed by Walt's, was this your doing, Sarah? Sarah just looked down. Sarah. Oh, sorry. Oh, man. I just took down the roadblocks. Sarah smiled. What'd you do? Don't worry about it. Just because we have to take the higher road right now doesn't mean I can't help keep your family together. But shh. Sarah held up her index finger. I need to change that there from once again, she's not on first name basis. Mr. Rogers, will you do the honors of bringing the Thomases up to date on the topic of discussion? Okay, Mark nodded. Sarah walked over to Walt, took his hands in hers. Walt's eyes got bigger as he glanced towards his parents and grandparents. She smiled a little and said, I mean, it's supposed to be a comma, not a period. She smiled a little and said, they know, Walt. Tell them why the higher road. She raised his hands up and kissed them, then let them drop as she stepped. Hang on, I need to fix this one. Backwards towards the door. As she stepped backwards towards the door. Sarah, see, it's the Marshmallow Man. Hey, Lewis, how's it going? All right, Sarah, hang on, I need to fix this here. Walt, what here? Walt started STA. Walt started. Don't. I'm just going to use Sarah's name. A-H. Sarah cautioned loudly, or I'll be spending the night in your room on top of you. Remember, the high road. Okay, Walt said, regaining his resolve. Sarah backed across the room to the door, gave a weak smile, then slipped through the door and disappeared into the darkness like a specter. Okay, Walt, why the higher road? Later that night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Walt and Mark were sitting in Walt's office going over some of the points of the discussion that Walt had led everybody in after Sarah left. So, what would be the latest that we should relocate here? Mark asked. Walt thought for a moment. That depends on how close to the event date we get before it becomes public knowledge. She said I think, hang on, I got to, yeah. But I would start boxing up and shipping non-essentials now. Get everything you can live without gone from Seattle. I don't know how long this will be kept quiet. Hell, Sarah found out, and there are probably 100 more like her that have or shortly will have figured out. We can't count on all of them keeping quiet. Do you really think something like this could occur? Mark said as he held up and wiggled a copy of Blood Moon Falling. Are you speaking as my attorney? Of course. Client confidentiality and privileged information. The data has been confirmed. So if things were to happen as laid out in the scenario in the book, the resulting effects would be fairly close to those described in the book. However, I think Uncle Dan was trying to write an optimistic storyline. It could get worse. Damn. Yeah. So if they plan to make it public, say 3 months out, let me put a comma on this. So if they plan to make it public 3 months out, then you may have a month to wait max. If you have the fuel to make the trip, Otherwise, aim for less than 2 weeks after the news comes out. The first week will be a freak show. Then things will settle down for a week. then two things will start. Then things will settle down for a week or two, and then start to get bad again. Eyes are blurry on me, folks. Sorry. Now, if it gets worse, say 6 months before, then you would have if word gets out, say 6 months before, then you'd have a couple months before things get ugly. And then there's whatever federal and state government plans to do. They may start mandatory relocation sooner than later and try to get a handle on the panic. And if it's only a month, run, don't walk to the nearest exit, Walt said. And his dad chuckled at the old tagline. How many vehicles do you think we should have to try to take when we evacuate? That's going to be a bit of a problem for keeping a lid on. Well, you can try to take as many of them. You can try to get as many of them moved here as you can, at least once a month. Just make sure you can move them here in time. I don't think you want to just walk away from them, but you may have to plan on leaving a cheap commuter car there and evacuating in the SAR and maybe one other. You could tow one with the SAR, but I don't think towing is a good idea. Walt brought his finger up to his lips as he thought of something. You might think of upgrading Mom's car to a bigger four-wheel drive, selling yours and leasing your car leasing a car you can leave behind. Leasing is probably the better option. I don't see the reason for abandoning running vehicles. And if I sell them, that's more money for supplies. Exactly. Try get everything you can moved here ASAP, and keep travel supplies in the SAR and Mom's new four-wheel drive. True, traveling light as possible would be better. If Michael gets on the stick and loads up on his final courses for the spring and for the spring, where was I? I lost it again. For the spring and summer semesters, then Jenna could relocate as soon as possible, and he could follow as soon as he graduates. If word has not leaked out by then. Again, the problem is when the beans get spilled, or if the government makes the announcement, Mark sighed. I think that I should get heads up on the government breaking the news, but that might be only a week at the most. If they keep it quiet until the end of September, who knows if I will get any notice before the day, more than a day or two. In any case, if I were you, I would put in for vacation starting the last week of September. That way, if they do keep it quiet until the last moment, you'll already be gone. Agree, but I don't see them keep being able to do that. Too many know, and someone will come out with some of the details that you are trying not to. Yeah, sorry about that. No. I understand. You took an oath and you have very little wiggle room. Luckily, Sarah figured it out. And was able to tell us what she felt she could. Mark paused, looked down at his son. You know she really loves you. I know. No, she really loves you. She held back information from us because she felt she had to abide by your oath as much as she could. But she told us just enough to get us to see what we needed to. I think she knows a whole lot more than she knows a whole lot more than she feels comfortable knowing. That's why she forced Sally, David, Brian, and Nikki's hands tonight. Yeah, I realized that she's carrying my burden longer than I planned. It was supposed to be just until I got sworn in. Then this thing happened. Heck, I haven't been, if I hadn't been cornered into running for sheriff, we would have gotten them married the week after she graduated high school. Really? Yeah, maybe even sooner if I would have agreed to it, but, well, she's stronger than me sometimes. Mark laughed. So is your mother. Walt nodded that he understood. But why wait until after the event passes? She doesn't want me to be distracted by her from doing my job. Ooh. Okay, where am I at here? I want to see how much farther down here I got to go. Okay. All right. Okay, I'll go a couple more pages before I wrap this up. But why wait until after the event? She doesn't want me to get distracted by her from doing my job. She insists that we can wait until then to make it public and get married. What are you going to do about that? What do you mean? Who's going to perform the ceremony? If we are in Milwaukee, who's going to marry you? There are several ministers in town, and the county clerk can do it. Heck, you could work up some legal way that you could do it. I'm more concerned about getting a doctor or two on board than who will marry us. They're most likely going to want to be with their families, and you don't want a whole bunch of outsiders. Anybody outside this family will have to sign some sort of agreement or contract of participation to be part of the group. Walt thought aloud as he picked at his goatee. It still itched a little, much like the group at the lake in Blood Moon Falling. What you need is to form an LLC survival group that rents the land from the ranch. That way, the LLC board of director picks who's admitted and removes anyone who becomes a troublemaker. And you, as the landowner, can always trump the LLC if needed. I guess you still do have a job, Walt smiles, CEO of the LLC. Okay, I'll get it done and filed within the week. But what about residence for the members? They can't stay in the house. No, Sarah was right. I'm going to need to put in some modular homes and RV pads. But for the LLC, I was thinking about up the canyon a mile or two, possibly up beyond the upper hay barns. There's already a well up there, and we can get a septic system put in next month. You might want to plan for 10 to 15 homes and RV pads. And the RV pads will need covers and a storage building. Yeah, Walt said as he leaned back in his chair and thought. Then his smile came to his face. Cargo containers, just like in the book. Just like in the books. Cargo containers, yeah. Each RV pad, say 30 feet wide, 50 feet long, has two 40-foot cargo containers and a peak roof over the area in between. Between them for RVs and a car or truck, Walt explained excitedly. Sounds like something that can be done fairly cheap and quickly. We sell memberships in the LLC to pay for it. They can store what they want in the cargo containers. And if they want power, they can pay extra for solar panels or put in their own system. We have to put in a big water tank on the hill so the water will have some pressure without individual pumps. That way the water will be provided, and we'll have a meter to prevent waste. There are a few doctors I know of that would want to get in on this. there are a few good-hearted preppers that the firm has dealings with. I can do background checks on them and drop hints and see if we get any takers. We'll set aside several plots for those that want to bring their own modular, and we'll set aside plots for those that want to bring their own modular homes. That will have to be on a special lease agreement. You have to know that they are buying into the LLC, not just for the space, but for each person. They can't be expected to bring extra people. They have to have enough food for at least 2 years for each person stored here, and we should recommend 5 years of food. No, we'll make it 5 years minimum and 10 years recommended. We'll say that's one of the that's what one of the containers is for. They have to be able to limit the number of residents for each pad, or there has to be a limit to the number of residents for each pad and modular home. Each modular home will have one cargo container that comes with the pad. They have the option to lease more space for more containers. Okay, what else? They can lease or bring more containers, but that eats into their ground area. Lot sizes will start at 10,000 square feet. They can lease up more up to 20,000 at the compound, and then up to 10 acres elsewhere on the ranch for farm gardening, livestock, and such. That'll give them room to extend their food supplies longer. What about our families? I have 10 years of mountain house for us already in the basement, but that does not include the Thomases or Smythes. Also, did you see the new hay barn by the horse stables? I noticed that this morning. Well, it's not just for hay. It's divided into several sections. The middle sections, there are 5 portable shipping container freezer units and 2 refrigeration units. Each of them are 40 feet or 40 footers. I have plans on processing enough of the herd to fill 2 freezers, and others will be the others will be used for frozen vegetables, cheese, and such. So the family's taken care of. And the 5th one, back up in case one of the others break down. In the refrigerators for fresh food we grow and store, like potatoes, carrots, beets, and such. Well, it looks like you've taken care of the family. Not until everyone is here, Walt said with concern heavy on his shoulders. When word gets out, we could go straight to worst case scenario. Seattle could erupt in chaos immediately. You might not be able to get out. And if you do get out, some towns between there and here may try to block roads to protect themselves. You may not be able to get through even with the SAR. And if you do get as far as the Snake River, I have a bad feeling that some idiot will try to blow a bridge, and if it succeeds, then others may get tried to blow other bridges, try to stop the evacuees from crossing into our side. I see what you mean. I wouldn't want to swim across the Snake River. We'll have to come up with some sort of plan for that. I will get Chris, Special Agent in Charge Davies. I will let Chris, Special Agent in Charge Davies, know about our concerns with bridges. What about the cousins? That's kind of up to them, he said as if he didn't care. Then added, we can bring in 3 extra modulars above the leach field like Sarah asked for them, but when news breaks, but when the news breaks, you can contact them and see if they want to buy in or not. Plans. then those can become homes for the newlyweds. The extras, 3 extras. I was thinking one for the Thomases, one for Grandpa Tom and Grandma Becca, one for the Aherns, one for you and Mom. You're going to want more room than a bedroom in the main house. One for the Rorks. Sarah would want her best friend here. Happy wife, happy life. Exactly. One more for just in case, and 6 trailer/RV pads for expanding families. Then the 3 extra modulars. What about Elizabeth? Walt bit his lips hard. Hang on, I put that in here. Hard until they started to bleed a little. Trying not to say something bad. She's your sister, but she burnt my bridges at the funeral. And then again at the reading of the will. Then she nuked him when she contested the will. If she apologizes and begs to come, she'll have to know that she'll be working with the horses and cows just like everybody else. Oh, and she comes alone. She tries to bring anyone with her without asking. They get shot and buried in the leach field. Walt growled. You could do that? No. Walt sighed. No. But I will. Sarah's voice shocked him. What the? How'd you get here? I walked in and sat down. Wow, we were that wrapped up in our conversations. Yeah. Thank you for including my family and Danny's. Hey, I care about you. Damn it, Walt, she exploded. Just say it. I know all about what you won't tell. I know all about what you won't tell me and what you don't want me to have to bear. I said I'd find out, and I did. You're right. It is a hard burden. I need strength, so just say it. I love you. Sarah rushed over and threw her arms around Walt, burying her head in his chest. Thank you. I needed to know so I could carry on. She sighed. It's tough being so hard. Dinner and a movie tomorrow night? Sarah reared back and punched Walt in the shoulder. No pity dates. We stay on the high road till it's done. Walt rubbed his shoulder. Damn, you hit hard. Damn straight I do, and I'll love harder once this is over. All I need is a weekly reminder on how you feel. Staying on the high road is going to get a lot harder, I know, but we have to do it. She turned and walked silently towards the door. Stop, Walt called out. Don't, or I'll fall from the road. Not that. Walk backwards, please. Sarah did. Stop. Now go forward. She did. Stop. How do you do that? You didn't make a sound and you're walking on an oak floor. It squeaks every time anybody walks there. Gunfighter's secret. And she walked out of the room. I think she came in to jump off the high road, Mark said. Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes she's so hard to read. So is your mom at times. All right, so I'm going to cut it off here at April. Didn't quite make it to 3 hours and a quarter. Didn't quite make it to chapter 5. Let's see, we're at page 95, and we have. Oh, we only got a couple pages. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. We only got a couple pages to and we'll be at chapter 5. So let's get on to the rest of the way at chapter 5. April. Walt was in the Maine County storage warehouse when his special AT&T satellite phone rang. Only 6 people had the number. Chris Davies, Jesse Carter, Secretary of Homeland Security, and Sarah. Walt answered phone. Walt here, please hold while I move to a better spot. Stepping off the side away from those who might overhear him, Walt checked the area when he was ready to answer the call. Okay, I'm clear. Hey, Walt, it's Chris. Hey, what's up? We got an update on the girl. What's her status? Pretty much same altitude as before. Pretty much the same attitude as before, but different perspective and talking a little faster. So I'm going to miss her? I'm afraid so. When will I see you? 2 weeks before I head home. Does she have a boyfriend? Not sure, but Jesse will know soon. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Walt hung up the satellite phone and quickly walked back over to the warehouse manager. Robert, I got to go. Keep me apprised of your progress and anything. Sure thing, Walt. Walt headed towards the door, so he called his dad. Oh, it said only 6 weeks. She's coming home 2 weeks early. It was late in the evening, and Walt was still going over the data that Jesse had delivered after lunch. Basically, what happened is after the asteroid passed Mars, its course had altered 0.02 of a degree, and its speed increased from a slingshot effect. So the asteroid, instead of passing at the end of October, would pass mid-October. The thing that really bothered him that the new path it was on would pass. The thing that really bothered him was the new path on which it would pass the Earth. It would still pass between the Earth and Moon, but it would pass at a slightly different angle and on the other side of the Earth. Hang on, I got a word. Between the Moon's orbit, orbit, there we go, between the Moon's orbit, but it would pass on a slightly different angle and on the other side of the Earth. It would pass closer to both, and such the effects would be much greater on both. Sorry, my eyes are getting tired and watering up here. Get the built up gunk out of them. With the effects of the asteroid being greater on Earth, you wonder if his preparation would be enough to protect his family. Then there was the question of what the effects it would have on the Moon. Nothing in his uncle's research had anything for him to focus on concerning what could happen to the Moon. However, that was something for Professor Johansson to work on later. His first concern was trying to figure out what the effects of the asteroid's new path would be here in Idaho. The second concern was, could he plan for them accordingly? Thirdly, was how bad would losing 2 weeks screw up the timetable, and what parts of that could they not make adjustments for? And chapter 5. So we're going to stop now here at chapter 5. Tomorrow morning, I may just do 2 hours from 9 to 11 unless I'm up early and feeling energetic, and then I may go from 8 to 11 Mountain Time. That is, folks, Mountain Time, which would be 9 to 11 is 11 to 1 Eastern time, or 10 to noon Eastern time adjustments. We'll have to see what happens, but I will have the look for the you can look on YouTube for the once I have it scheduled, which I should have it scheduled later tonight, possibly for it. And I will schedule it here in a minute. I will schedule it to go from 9 to 11. But if I decide to start it early and I have enough time, I will change the start time in StreamYard and YouTube. So when you look on YouTube's page, you see stuff, or you go to my page, to my homepage, to under live streams to look at it, it'll show the change in time. It'll either give you the equivalent for 11 o'clock Eastern AM or 8 o'clock Eastern AM. All right. So everyone, stay happy, stay safe, get prepared. And so tomorrow we will cover chapters 5 and 6. And chapter 5, as you can tell, is titled The Leak. All right, everyone, take care, and I'll see you around.